In the era of digital transformation, identity and access management, IAM, is essential. Fast and reliable access to online resources by employees, partners, and customers is critical, and IAM is the key to enabling, controlling, and extending access to those resources. But IAM implementations at many organizations are often an ineffective and inefficient patchwork of technologies. What's needed is a comprehensive IAM strategy. Hi, I'm Stan Gibson, and I'll be your host and moderator for this on-demand webcast. Joining me to explore how to implement strategic identity and access management in your organization is Janelle Schock, Senior Director, Strategic Consulting for IAM at Optiv. Welcome, Janelle. It's great to have you here for this webcast.
Yes, thank you very much, Stan. Thank you for having me to join you in discussing this exciting topic.
Janelle, why is identity and access management important to the way that business is being done today?
That's a great question. In a world of security, IAM touches everything, whether it's understanding who's trying to gain access to your network, what your employees or contractors or business partners are doing inside or outside of your network with the data that they're manipulating or reading, or whether it's normal behavior for them or the organization's data. IAM is really at the root of everything that we're doing. When we want to streamline authentication experiences for employees, that's really identity and access management. Having them have only one username and password that they need to keep track of, that they authenticate across the enterprise and the ecosystem for their organization, it really helps enable the business partners and the employees and your contractors to do everything that they need to do in support of your business. We also we want to improve the ability to meet compliance requirements for your organization or for our clients' organizations. We do that by having visibility into all of the access that our employees or our contractors or, again, our business partners have within our ecosystem, how they use that access, when that access was provisioned, whether it was taken away when they transferred to a new role, whether it was terminated appropriately when they left the organization. Having that visibility and being able to provide that proof to our auditors is incredibly important for our enterprises, and identity and access management helps support that. We also gain efficiencies through identity and access management, whether that's allowing a new employee to have all of the access that they need the day that they start. So if they show up on Monday in the morning, they have their computer, they have their login, they have the access to all of the applications that they need across the enterprise's ecosystem, and it's appropriate for the functions that they're going to be performing within their job. We also want them to not have to spend a bunch of time memorizing or changing or managing, often in an unsecure way, multiple usernames and passwords and authentication techniques for different applications or systems that they're going to be accessing across the ecosystem. So really working and gaining those operational efficiencies can directly be tied to an IAM program. And then finally, we think about loyalty, both an awareness, and really, are we embracing the future of security and IT and the different services that are available to us in this day and age of the world, really. And it's understanding, the expectations that customers have for our enterprises to be able to provide them services, whether they're logging into a customer portal, whether they're accessing or buying equipment or services from us. We want to enable them to have a streamlined experience, but also an experience that's tailored to the services that they care about. And that can be gained through identity and access management by understanding how they use our services, what we can market, what we can direct them to, what services they've paid for, if it's like a subscription-based service that our enterprise is providing to our customers, and all having that through a streamlined customer portal that really just shows them what they need to care about and what they want to care about, rather than maybe every single service that we might offer to all of our customers all at once. We also want to think about our brand awareness and our loyalty from an employee perspective as well. Solutions or sites like Glassdoor.com, where employees will go out and they'll talk about their experiences at organizations as an employee at that organization. A lot of times they might say, this is a great organization. I love the people. I love what I do, but it's a nightmare having to use and go through all of these different processes with IT. I never know whether I have the access that I really need. I have to remember 17 different usernames and passwords. I have to write down stuff because I don't understand what I'm trying to do. All of those things really can impact your ability to acquire and retain talent. So it impacts our customers and it impacts our own people when we think about IT, security, and identity and access management in particular.
Well, that's certainly a broad range of important benefits. What are some of the challenges to IAM deployment?
So some of the challenges to identity and access management is technology deployments can be challenging for a variety of reasons, but it's important to take a step back and think about identity and access management at the larger picture from the program level and identifying all of the intrinsic people, process, and technology components of that program. So if we're approaching identity and access management tactically, we sometimes end up getting excited and going forward with a tool in a decentralized or ad hoc way, rather than really examining how does this problem we're trying to solve fit into the bigger organizational strategy related to identity and access management for our enterprise. Once we've figured out that strategy and selected that technology and are deploying it, comes new challenges. Those might be, how do we communicate those challenges to our end users? How do we effectively train our administrators, our approvers, our reviewers on day zero as well as into the future? Are we focusing on both risk mitigation as well as business enablement and the changes that we're making? When we think about why identity and access management is so important and some of the challenges that organizations have that don't have identity and access management, we think about some of the statistics related to the huge number of breaches, the ever-growing and ever-growing number of breaches across the world, across the globe. And we evaluate that. Analysts are evaluating, what's really causing those breaches? What's the root cause of it outside of just malicious behavior? So we've seen that 81% of hacking-related breaches are because of weak or stolen passwords. And if we think about what does that mean, weak passwords being repeatable passwords. If we think about administrative passwords being weak, it might be that you deploy an application or a solution and you end up just perpetuating the use of the default password, or you create a standard of how your passwords should be structured across your enterprise for all administrative or service accounts. And so if we compromise one account, we can figure out the pattern and get through the ecosystem and through the network in an easy way. We can also think about data breaches and what does that really mean, both to our employees who may have their health information compromised, as well as an example, or as well as our customers who we may lose our customer data, whether that's privileged information about themselves, like PII information, their health information, if it's a health provider, for example, or whether it's their credit card information or other type of financial information. We have a huge number of data breaches that result in exposing our customers or our employees' data. We also have found that 76% of folks that are in IT have personally experienced the loss or theft of company data, or they're aware of the loss or theft of company data just during the tenure in the last 2 years. That's an enormous amount of data that's being lost or is leaking out in some way, whether it's through an insider threat, such as malicious or just general negligence or accidents, or whether it's from an outside attacker stealing that data. So when we think about that identity and access management matters, we also have to recognize that it isn't something that's just a light switch that we can turn on and suddenly be very successful with. We want to make sure that we're approaching it in a way that makes sense. And so we need to examine what some of those challenges are that many of our clients and other organizations have experienced when setting up or going through either tactical identity and access management projects or establishing and working through an IAM program. One of the top things that we hear about from our customers, and in fact go through experiences on our side as well, is the lack of skilled resources that have years of experience in identity and access management and really understand fundamentally what we're trying to do with whatever project or program that we're putting in place. Now, that doesn't mean just technical expertise or technical staff, people that can deploy, architect, or deploy, engineer, and configure solutions. It also means our project management staff from our PMO really understanding the intricacies and the complexities associated with IAM programs. It means our leaders, our team, our IAM team leaders, our CISOs, other organizational leaders that really need to embrace change, educating and having them be aware of the challenges associated with IAM and the importance of IAM can be something that definitely takes time and a lot of work. And so that's why when we think about the people, process, technology aspects of really everything IT and specifically and especially identity and access management, that people side is such a core component. Moving on to kind of the technology view, we think we as individuals tend to latch on to the ideas of a shiny new toy or a shiny new thing that we're really excited about. And that happens in identity and access management as well. And so we talk to a lot of organizations that have selected a product and get excited about their technology and think that by making that product purchase and plugging it into their network, that it's going to immediately start solving all of their pain points and really driving the change that they want to see across their enterprise. And unfortunately, with IAM and many other aspects of IT security, or maybe not unfortunately, but regardless, we have the requirement that we really examine the processes associated with what we're trying to do. So we've talked about the people, and we need to really focus on the processes as well. Because technology is only as good as the people supporting it and the people that are going to be impacting it, as well as the processes that it's automating or helps driving. So really defining and understanding, does this process make sense for our organization moving forward? Or do we need to do some process re-architecture and then make our technology work for us instead of, working for the technology or just focusing on the technology itself? We also see a lot of organizations focusing on solving very tactical or point problems. And while that can get check boxes from a compliance perspective done, it can maybe meet requirements or meet deadlines that we've communicated to our executives or our shareholders. We might be missing the larger picture. So really planning and understanding, what we're doing and why we're doing it and taking a programmatic approach, that's some of the challenges that we've seen in the organizations that we work with.
Those are certainly some significant challenges, Janelle. Well, what does strategic and holistic IAM look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a bit of a complicated answer, but there's guidelines to take into account where we think, okay, what is our approach to this engagement or to our IAM program holistically? Do we have a defined project management approach? Are we a waterfall organization? Are we agile? Have we adopted something like Kanban or SAFe? Do we run sprints, and what does that sprint duration look like? All of that needs to really be identified and examined before we go about implementing a robust IAM program. We also need to make sure that our priorities are aligned for our resources, and we understand everyone has a full-time or often more than full-time job these days, especially in IT. How are we going to pull our subject matter experts in, and what kind of program role do they have as part of our overarching IAM program? Creating dashboards for our program so that we can educate our stakeholders, our executives, or other folks that are just interested in what's happening at the program level. So it's really having this overarching program aspect of identity and access management for your enterprise that focuses on the planning of the program itself, meaning why are we doing what we're doing and what do we really need to be trying to do people, process, and technology-wise. The building out of those, which can be maybe hiring or training the right resources, architecting and engineering the right solutions, and then the run aspect. Okay, we've got these things in place. We've got our processes restructured. We've got our technology deployed. We've got our folks trained, at least at the initial part. What do we do from here? Do we continuously examine the program? Do we continuously make sure that our folks are trained on the next iterations of the releases of the technology that we've put in place? Are we having the right governance framework in place to continuously examine what we're doing, maybe around roles or around, authentication practices? So all of that is at the program level. We then have to break out and kind of think about identity and access management in different compartments and understand how they all work together and interplay together, starting from the identity data itself. So your information about your employees, your contractors, your business partners, your customers, what are their names? Where are they located? Who do they report to? What is their department? All of that important information, where does that originate, and who controls that information, and how can we consume that information and push it across our enterprise in an appropriate way while focusing on privacy and all of the other components that we really need to have awareness on. We then want to think about, okay, we know who our identities are. We know the data about those identities. Let's get them access to the things that they actually need access to so that they can perform whatever functions that they need to perform. If it's an employee and they're a financial analyst, let's get them access to Active Directory and to their email and to the other 7 different applications that they need. What's the workflow and the approval process of onboarding them? What if they need to access additional information or additional applications or data, but they've been an employee for a while? What's the access request process? How do we terminate people? Do we even need to worry about termination for customers, or should we just focus on terminations for our employees or contractors or business partners? So really the user lifecycle management processes, really mapping all of that out and understanding the complexities there and implementing processes that make sense for each of our different types of users. And then the technology comes on top of that to help support that. We then also want to think about access management. So that's the authentication, proving you are who you say you are to whatever systems you're trying to authenticate to so that you can get in and access or manipulate the data in an appropriate way. Privileged access management. We talked earlier around how a lot of breaches come from service accounts or administrative accounts, really understanding and controlling who has access, what access that they have, the rotation of the passwords, the workflow, the check-in and check-out processes, recording what people are doing with those privileged accounts. All of that is incredibly important and takes specific focus and is a little bit different in how we manage that than a normal or standard user account and the normal or standard user access that maybe non-administrators or non-privileged users might have. we then have to think, okay, we still have compliance requirements. We still need to be accountable for the data that we're owning or we've created or we're a steward of, whether it's, again, our internal data, our intellectual property, our customer data, whatever that is. We need to have awareness and governance around who has access and what they can do to that data. So that's implementing things like segregation of duties or toxic combinations of access, or performing access reviews or certification campaigns, or creating the idea of role-based access control where we have groupings of like functionality or like access to support a specific functionality. But all of that kind of has to have its own focus as well. And then we get into what is our data that we're trying to protect, our data classification. Do we have certain confidentiality, integrity, and availability requirements? Do we need to increase the requirements from an authentication perspective if we have highly confidential data? Do we then tie into perhaps multi-factor authentication? Do we have other adaptive authentication techniques that need to be put into place to protect certain levels of data? What kind of governance processes do we have around the data that lives in our organization? And understanding the difference in managing access to structured data, like databases, versus unstructured data, like Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, Excel documents, and how all of this ends up working together and driving real-time or near real-time decisions as we work through the IAM program holistically.
That's certainly a comprehensive approach to IAM, Janelle, but perhaps you could tell us what benefits can organizations expect to reap from strategic and holistic IAM?
It's a great question, and we have a cohesive approach that works for their business is really the benefit that ends up happening from a strategic approach to identity and access management. It's the focus on risk mitigation as well as business enablement, and that's how we really frame a lot of things within the IAM practice here at Optiv is risk mitigation and business enablement. And if we think about IAM, it really impacts almost every security problem or idea or initiative that's out there, whether that's things like insider threats, again, malicious or unintentional, whether it's supporting digital transformation and what does that mean for Internet of Things, for our analytics, for smart devices, all of that comes with digital transformation really is well supported by identity and access management. When we look at our mobile workforce or the workforce in general, we often have folks that are out in the field, such as, for example, an insurance organization. They're going to have agents that are going to be in all over the place, all over the country or across multiple states that are really working with their customers. They have to be enabled and supported from a mobile perspective. They might be driving out to someone's house to look at damage that's happened from a storm. They might just be on a smart device that may or may not be provisioned and managed by their organization, but they need to be able to submit the claim and all of the information there. And that analogy can be made across so many different enterprises in this day and age. When we think about compliance and regulatory requirements, identity and access management addresses, a huge amount of security controls and requirements for third-party auditors and institutions that require, certification and accreditation to have governmental information on their systems. So it really spans everything that we can think of that our business really needs to continue to support our customers, develop and protect our intellectual property, and drive innovation across the services that we're offering to our customers.
Janelle, perhaps you could tell us what Optiv brings to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So Optiv has a long history in the identity and access management space. We have a huge practice that focuses just on data protection and identity and access management. And there's a variety of different things that Optiv is doing or has done in the recent past that I'd like to talk with you through. The first one is the Identity Defined Security Alliance and our approach to identity-centric security, and really understanding that there's so many elements of security that really rely on identity data and transactions to support, be it firewalls and understanding where your traffic is coming from and who's trying to do what within your enterprise, whether it's what's happening out in the cloud and how your data is flowing up or coming down from the cloud and what we can do around cloud security brokering, whether it's your privileged accounts and them impacting your services or your servers or your networking equipment. All of this and so many more components really tie back into identity and access management, both from an access authentication perspective and authorization or entitlement perspective and a governance or awareness perspective. So our approach really includes tackling engagements and advising our clients from multiple avenues. That's by utilizing folks that are really senior and strong technical resources that can architect and engineer our solutions with our clients, our advisors that help understand what are the pain points and what are we really trying to do, our strategic consultants that perform our workshops and assessments with our clients that help us figure out at a deeper level, where are we trying to go? Why are we trying to go there? And here's what your peers are doing, or here's what we see out with the rest of our clients, and here's some recommendations on how we can tackle some of the pain points that you guys that our clients are experiencing. We help put in program governance components, such as really helping to define what are the responsible parties, what subject matter experts should be involved, what does a steering committee or governance committee look like, what are their responsibilities, what is a project team or a product owner needing to do in the agile world, and driving all of that and providing that cohesive management of the overall program as it makes sense and is tailored for our clients. We have a defined approach to identity and access management when we're approaching things from a programmatic perspective that starts with really identifying why are we here? What are we trying to do? What is the vision of where we're trying to go? Where are we today? Talking to both technical owners as well as business owners, as well as HR, and all of the different folks that really have a stake in the game as it applies to identity and access management, and figuring out where we should go, prioritizing that, moving into the planning stage of, okay, we know what we want to do, let's figure out how we actually need to go and do it then, defining that roadmap at a good, low detail way, and then starting our implementations and figuring out from a prioritized perspective, what do we need to do first? And that first decision is really critical for gaining credibility across the enterprise. We move into what we call the credibility phase. Some organizations might use, for example, the privileged access management, vaulting, and session management project as a credibility phase to say, listen, we have this vision, we know the way we need to go, we know what we need to do and why we're doing it. Here's this centralized programmatic approach to privileged access management, and here's what it means to our enterprise, how we're protecting our data and our customer data in a much better way going forward. And showing them that we can actually execute on that plan and have it be successful. that allows us to get a lot more buy-in from our business owners and our IT stakeholders and say, okay, it looks like this program is making sense. Let's continue to move on and build additional programs or projects out. We then kind of move around to growing our program and implementing more and more capabilities, more of our different project phases that are, again, supporting our overall program vision, and then optimizing what we're doing. Okay, we've got a lot of stuff out now. We've done process reorganization. We've got the right people in place. We've got the technology supporting our people and our processes. Now let's focus and kind of re-level set. Did we achieve our vision? Are we meeting the needs of our organization? Are we mitigating the right risks? Are we enabling our business in the right way? And then continuing to work through that cycle in a continuously examined way. So when we think about the program governance and we think about how to best enable our clients in the Optiv methodology, we really want to focus on managing our expectations, managing the project, the program as a whole, integrating with existing technology that the organization may have, whether it's existing IAM technology or other security, IT security technology, and putting that in place and integrating that with the programs and the teams that the organization has, and making appropriate changes where it does make sense. And then continuously driving communication, education, and awareness to our stakeholders, our steering committees, our subject matter experts, and the business owners across the enterprise.
Janelle, in a comprehensive approach to IAM, I'm wondering about the role of industry partnerships. Perhaps you could tell us what Optiv has in terms of partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. So Optiv has a large number of security partners, but specifically within identity and access management, we're very focused on those partners whose approach to the IAM space make a lot of sense, work for our clients, and whose product visions are continuously examined and enhanced to meet the growing needs of our mutual customers or clients. Within each of the areas of identity and access management, we've identified and built really strong partnerships with multiple vendors that support the specific components, such as privileged access management with CyberArk or BeyondTrust or Baumgart Lieberman, or the access management, SSO, MFA, and directory services area, such as Ping and Okta, or the identity governance and administration area with our partnerships with SailPoint, RSA, CA, Savia, and others. Not to exclude anyone on any particular list, but we have really great partnerships with a number of vendors that provide solutions that we believe in and that our clients gain satisfaction from being engaged in and deploying within their enterprise. Within our practice itself, we have people that are specifically focused on areas of IAM that can really gain expertise from an engineering and architect perspective. So if we have folks that really are interested in privileged access management, and that's where they really focus. So they can bring that subject matter expertise and that deployment and architecture and configuration experience to our clients so that our clients are really enabled in the best way possible.
Janelle, perhaps you could tell us how some companies are implementing strategic IAM.
Sure. So our clients have an incredible variety of the drivers for their identity and access management program, but each of them, again, can be tied back to risk mitigation, compliance support, or business enablement. We work with clients and organizations across all verticals, private and public, and from 500 to 200,000 employees and contractors to millions of customers. And they all need to tackle IAM in a slightly different way. And so we we see success from companies that really examine what their needs are, taking a strategic approach, focusing on the enterprise as a whole, and then taking bite-sized chunks out of the program and the roadmap that they put together or we help them put together. Many of our clients have organizations within their company that are taking kind of a tactical approach. They get excited and they go out and purchase a PAM solution that they roll out only within their specific department or within their specific area of the company. While another area might be rolling out something kind of similar, but it's a different technology, it's being deployed in a different way. So we're working with our clients to put together a way of having centralized services that can be adopted by the other areas of the organization. So an example of this is a state government that we have been doing work with that has a number of state agencies. So they have a centralized team that supports IT and governance and security as a whole. But then they have all these different disparate agencies that kind of do things the way that they want to do, whether it's something that's being touted by the central authority or central team or something just that they've selected on their own. And so there's a lot of organizations that actually have something similar going on, whether they're in the public or private space. And we are putting together programs that allow these disparate teams that are under this one umbrella to adopt and opt into the services that are being provided by the centralized IAM or security team. And we're seeing a huge amount of success from those companies that are doing that because word spreads. You know, one or two of these disparate teams, they'll adopt the centralized approach, and then they'll talk to their counterparts in the other disparate teams or companies that might be under this one organization umbrella, and they'll say, hey, this is really working for us. This makes sense. Our people have less passwords to worry about. The access request workflow process is really streamlined. You know, we used to have all that headache the way that we used to do it, and it really makes sense now. And what we see is that it kind of snowballs and allows, and it shows up with a lot of other of these departments or subsidiary organizations adopting this centralized approach that umbrella organization has established for them. We also, of course, have customers that have a very cohesive, can drive adoption across the enterprise, and that's where we just work on messaging, communication, and making sure everyone is aware that changes are coming. And some of that communication that we see that companies are being very successful with include having videos that they evangelize and show, you know, this is what's happening. This is what IAM is. This is this new thing that we're doing with IAM. We have a lot of organizations that have little TVs in the elevators, and they have company messages, and you can put IAM messages about changes that are coming or are happening shortly or happening in the future that are planned, and really educate the user population on what's happening. So we're seeing some really creative and innovative ways to communicate and train resources throughout organizations when they're rolling out these IAM programs. So that's just some of the things that we're seeing with our clients that are implementing strategic IAM and how they're making it work for their organization.
We're reaching the end of our time, Janelle, but before we close, what should members of our audience remember?
It would be great if they remember to think about Optiv as their identity and access management partner. We would love to be able to speak to their organization around IAM, what they're doing today, and where they really want to go in the future. Outside of just thinking about Optiv, it's great if organizations can remember that IAM is complex, but it is something that you can be successful at. It shouldn't be a program that people are scared of approaching or are overwhelmed by. Let's just take it in bite-sized, consumable chunks and evaluate where we need to go and what we need to do to better support our organization, and then work on it piece by piece, but in a centralized way that has an overall strategy and vision attached to it.
That's great information, Janelle. That's all the time we have in this on-demand webcast. Sincere thanks to Janelle Schock, Senior Director for Strategic Consulting for IAM at Optiv, for explaining why strategic and holistic IAM is essential in the digital business era and how Optiv technology can help organizations get the most out of their IAM implementations. For additional information on this topic, please click on the link to download the white paper Identity and Access Management, the Strategic Imperative, in the Resources section of your console. And thanks for joining us. For Optiv and IDG, I'm Stan Gibson.